What exactly is straight mineral oil? It's the most basic type of engine oil, refined from crude oil without any additives. It's used mainly to break in new or overhaul engines because it doesn't contain dispersants or detergents. So what's different about ashless dispersant oil? Ashless dispersant, or AD oil, is a mineral-based oil with special additives to keep dirt and carbon suspended in the oil instead of letting them stick together and block passages. The key thing is it doesn't contain ash-forming metals, which makes it ideal for aircraft engines. And what about synthetic oil? Synthetic oil isn't refined the normal way. It's chemically engineered to perform better under extreme temperatures, which is why turbine engines use it. It provides excellent stability, flow, and protection even under heavy loads. Can you use regular car oil in an airplane engine? No, that's a bad idea. Automotive oils and aviation oils are designed for totally different operating environments. Airplane engines deal with higher temperatures and very different cooling and lubrication needs. What does multi-viscosity oil mean? It means the oil changes how thick or thin it is depending on temperature. It stays thinner in cold weather for easier starts and thicker when hot for better protection. Where can you find out which oil to use in a specific aircraft? That information is listed in the aircraft's pilot operating handbook or flight manual. What are some of the main jobs oil performs in an engine? Oil does a lot. It reduces friction, helps seal and cushion moving parts, removes heat, keeps the inside of the engine clean, prevents corrosion, and even performs hydraulic functions when needed. What does an air oil separator or deaerator do in a turbine engine? As oil moves through the system, it mixes with air. The deaerator swirls the oil to separate out that trapped air, and the released air is used to pressurize the oil tank. How is oil pressure kept at the correct level? A pressure relief valve automatically senses when the oil pressure is too high and redirects extra oil back to the sump to keep it steady. Why does the oil pressure line have a restricted orifice? That small restriction helps smooth out pulsations from the oil pump, giving the pressure gauge a steady reading. What's the difference between a hot tank and a cold tank lubrication system? In a hot tank system, the oil cooler is in the pressure subsystem, and the scavenged oil goes straight back to the tank without being cooled first. In a cold tank system, the oil cooler is in the scavenged side, so the oil is cooled before returning to the tank. Where is oil stored in a wet sump system? It's stored right inside the engine itself. And in a dry sump system, the oil is stored in a separate external tank. Scavenged pumps and external lines move the oil back and forth between the engine and the tank. What does a chip detector do? A chip detector is basically a magnetic sensor that attracts and catches tiny metal particles floating in the oil. During maintenance, it's checked for metal. If any is found, mechanics inspect the engine to find where the metal came from. What parts of the lubrication system should be checked during a 100-hour or annual inspection? Inspectors check the oil sump or tank, filter, strainer screen, oil cooler, temperature control valve, oil pressure, and temperature instruments, and all areas for leaks. Which instruments show the condition of the oil system during flight? The oil pressure and oil temperature gauges. What's done with an oil filter after it's removed from the engine? It's cut open, and the inside pleats are carefully examined for metal flakes or other contaminants that show what's happening inside the engine. What's a spectrometric oil analysis program? It's a diagnostic system where oil samples are sent to a lab on a regular schedule. The oil is burned in an electric arc, and the light is analyzed for traces of metals like aluminum, copper, and iron. Changes in these metals over time tell mechanics where internal wear might be happening. How do most aircraft show oil quantity? With a dipstick that measures how much oil is in the tank or sump. When should oil quantity be checked on a turbine engine? Right after the engine is shut down, that's when the oil has drained back and gives an accurate reading. Where is oil temperature usually measured on a piston engine? Just before the oil enters the engine's internal passages, usually at the oil pressure screen. Why is it important to change oil at regular intervals? Over time, oil collects dirt and acids that can wear down parts and cause corrosion. Changing the oil keeps the engine clean and prevents damage. What can happen if piston rings aren't broken in properly? Poor break-in can cause the engine to use too much oil because the rings never seat correctly. And what are some common reasons for high oil consumption? It can come from worn or broken piston rings, bearings that are starting to fail, rings installed incorrectly, or oil leaks, either external or through a vent line like the fuel pump vent.